Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi. Now today's video is going to be a little bit of a change from the normal sort of things that I record on here and show you, and that's because it's going to be repairing this. Now I've had this in my collection for about 20 years. I've actually got two of them and they hang on the wall in my kitchen and have hung there for as long as I've had them really, and a lot of people see them, don't really know what they are. They think they're some sort of a bit of sort of modern art or something like that, and then the odd person will see them and they immediately know exactly what it is. Now for the sort of eagle-eyed among you, you can see that it does look a little bit like a coffin cover or something like that, but if you've ever seen the Star Wars movie Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, then you might just know what this is, and that's because they are a part of Anakin's pod racer. Now it's one of those sort of pieces that really it's a sort of blink and you miss it piece, but I'll show you some images now of exactly what it is. These feature on the sides of both of the pods that are sort of at the front of Anakin's pod racer, and they flap in and out to sort of control the air, I guess, something like that. And you can actually see them in a couple of sort of key scenes within the movie. Once right next to Jar Jar Binks' head, and another time R2-D2 is fixing another component on the pod racer right next to one of these. Now I managed to get these in my collection just by sort of one of those sort of bits of chance. I happen to know a guy who was working at Leavesden Studios, not on the movies but doing some other things there, and he managed to save these from a skip. Now I have two of them. I've got this one here that it is in front of me, which is made out of fiberglass. It's been cast off the other one. The other one is actually made out of wood and is really very heavy, but it's you know, you can clearly see that the one has been cast out of the other. And I have a third one which I'll show you later on in the video, which is probably the most interesting of them because it actually has some details about the sort of the shooting that goes on. So I'll show you that one at the end. But really in today's video what I want to do is make some repairs to this fiberglass one, because during a house move at one point it got some slight damage to it, and it's not that sort of important, the damage, but I want to repair it because it's sort of it's in an area that if it keeps getting knocked it will get worse. So let me show you the damage and I'll show you what I'm going to have a go at fixing today. So this is the fiberglass one, as I say. And on the side, at some point during transit, it got chipped. So you can see there's a bit of the fiberglass missing there. And there's a slightly larger, sort of deeper chip at this end. Now, I'm sure a lot of people would say don't bother sort of repairing it because this is a prop and it is something that you see in the movie. But I want to, and I think having fixed toys over the last few years and learnt some skills and sort of abilities in that, I thought I would have a go. You know, I have no idea what the value of these things are. I'm sure some people would say that, you know, fixing it up maybe sort of will reduce the value, but it's not something I'm concerned about. I just want to repair these to stop the damage getting any worse. So you can see that's the chip there. There is a little bit more damage on the side here, but that's sort of in an area that doesn't get tapped much, so I'm not going to worry about that. So I'm going to have a go at repairing these two pieces today using the skills I've learnt fixing some old toys. So to repair these two areas of damage, I'm going to use the milliput, which is something I've used a lot for fixing toys, and I'm sort of fairly confident in how to use it. And I think for such a small area I should be able to sort of push the milliput in and shape it sort of by hand and do a fine bit of sanding just to get the sort of the final finish I want. The actual quality of this piece is really very rough. A lot of the stuff that's made for props is not particularly sort of well finished, especially on something like this where it really is, it's quite a background item. You never see it particularly sort of close up. So overall there's a lot of sort of marks and damage on it anyway. This was how I got it when it first sort of arrived here. You can see there is a sort of little, what looked like little dots all over it, and that's because when it was thrown into the skip it had already been wrapped up into bubble wrap, and the bubble wrap seems to have sort of stuck to whatever paint was on here. So you can see all over the ship there is these sort of little dots. I'll just get the light on that. So it's sort of got this strange mottling to it, and again that, as I say, is exactly how it arrived here sort of when I first got it. So I've not changed any of that. All of these scratches that are on it again were as it arrived, so it's only this damage on the side, and I think, you know, even a rough fix will make that look better. So yeah, I'm going to use the two-part milliput. I'm going to mix this together. You take equal amounts of sort of each of the different bits of it, mix it together, and then you get a little bit of putty that you can sort of rub in, and I can shape it using some tools and that, and also smooth it down with some water. We'll then leave that to dry for 24 hours, and then it'll be a case of mixing paint to try and match this colour. Now I think I have a colour to match this, because I did recent video on repainting He-Man's hair, and to me this looks a lot like He-Man's hair colour, so I'm going to use that as the basis point. But first up, let's repair these bits of damage. So that is the first bit done. I've managed to sort of capture the quality and the sort of roughness of the original piece there. I've left it a little bit proud, so I'm just going to give that a bit of a sand down once it's done. But I think that once that's painted, it's not going to look too bad at all. So I'm going to get on with the other sort of area at the bottom of this fin, and we'll do that. Overall, I think that's going to be a lot better. And once that's hardened, it should stop the rest of it cracking, because the problem with this sort of glass fibre type stuff is it tends to crack. Once it's got a crack in it, it wants to sort of crack a bit more. So I think, yeah, that should do the job. So let's fix the other end, and then we'll let this all dry overnight, and we can see if we can paint this to match. It's now a day later, and the Milliput has had time to dry, and I've given everything a little sand as well. And I'm really very happy with how this has turned out. You'd hardly notice that had sort of been repaired, apart from obviously the colour, which we're going to sort out in a minute. So that is a very satisfying sort of fill there. And if I show you the other end as well, you can see this is exactly the same. So again, I've let it dry, and I've just sanded it very lightly with some fine grit sandpaper, really very fine grit, just to take the edge off it. And you can see it's actually rubbed a bit of the yellow paint into it, so it's already starting to sort of blend in. So now I'm going to try and match the colour of the paint. As I say, it did look a lot like He-Man's hair. So this was the sort of base colour that I used for that, which is some Vallejo model paint acrylics. Now this would have originally been spray painted or airbrushed, I guess. So yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be painting with a brush because I just need to do a very tiny area. So this is called gold yellow. I've also got some of this Meng colour, which is a sort of red brown, because I think that's too vibrant. I need a little bit of red in it. If you put black in, this will go an awful colour. So I've got a sort of reddy brown here to mix in, and I'm going to get some white as well, just because I think there's a bit of a sort of extra white needs to go in it. And I'll just mix until I get a colour that I think is about right, and we'll sort of colour this over and see if we can get it to match really nicely. So let's get mixing. And I think that is me done for this. I let everything dry and I've sort of given it a little bit of aging as well to try and make it match in. I've just sort of used a very old bit of very fine grained sandpaper, so it's already got sort of dirt and grime on it, just to try and make it match all of the other sort of marks and dings and scratches that this surface has. And you can see there, that's not a bad match at all. The other end, let me just turn this fin round so you can see there. Again, I've tried to match all of the sort of scratches and scrapes that this fin already has, and I don't think you'd sort of notice that too much. Certainly, someone just coming to this afresh would not know that this had ever been damaged at this point, so I'm very happy with how that goes. And yeah, I think that's going to be about it. Now, this fin I can go and put back on the wall. Luckily, with both of these fins, this is the fiberglass one, the wooden one as well, has a bracket on the back of it, so it's got this metal bracket with a couple of holes, and this was how it was originally held onto the pod racer. So using this as a sort of a basis, I actually built myself some wall brackets that fit exactly into this, and then I can put a pin through either side to pin it onto the wall, and they hang quite nicely just sort of using that bracket. But as I mentioned earlier in the video, I have one other of these which has got some sort of interesting marks on it, so let's take a closer look at that one. So this is the third version of the fin that I have, and I think this is the most interesting one, basically just because it has some notes on it, and you can clearly see that this is an early stage version of the pod racer fin, because it's got Anakin's rocket. It doesn't say pod racer on it. They've also spelled Anakin wrong, and this says Tunisia, because I have a feeling this is one of the ones that was taken all the way to Tunisia. There's a great photo of George Lucas after a storm destroyed most of the set. There's a picture of him on the set holding a broken version of one of these fins, and you can clearly see that it is the same colour as this, so it hasn't been painted that nice sort of vibrant orangey yellow colour. It is this sort of more mottled grey with sort of different bits of reds on it, and so that's why I think this one possibly has come all the way from Tunisia. And you can see here it says pre-painted stage, so this is the sort of bare bones of it. This doesn't have a bracket on the back of it. I think at one point it must have had one. You can see there are the remains of one and bits of screws sort of left through it. The yellow paint was actually because this was stored next to another one of the pod racer fins, and so some of the yellow paint has sort of scraped off on it, but otherwise this is the sort of the same basic thing. Again, this is made of wood. I'm going to say sort of some dense board like MDF or something like that. It is really very heavy. You can really feel it's got some weight to it, but I just like the fact it has all of these sort of bits of history still stuck to it. Now this one I don't have displayed because I've actually got nowhere particularly to display it, so it's just sort of stored away, and at some point I would like to get it on display just because I think it is quite an interesting, unique piece, and it certainly does link this back to the movie, and the fact that there is that shot of George Lucas holding a part of one of these I think is quite a sort of key photo to have. Now the other two fins, it's very hard to say whether they were actually used in the movie. They don't look like final versions to me. They don't have the sort of the weathering and detailing on them. Maybe they were ones that were made as spares, you know, because of things like the sets getting destroyed by storms. Maybe they had some spares lying around. It's very hard to say, but these are definitely from the movie. You know, they're definitely props that were made for it, but I'm not sure whether any of them are actually sort of seen on screen. But that doesn't matter. They're sort of unique pieces, and I certainly have enjoyed having them on display, and I'm going to keep displaying them for years to come because they're great talking points. So I think this has been a sort of a bit of a change of a sort of pace of video, because it's not the normal things that I tend to fix, but I did want to do those repairs to the broken fin because it's just something I didn't want to get any worse, and I think doing those sort of bits of repair, even though they're probably not up to the standard of some people who restore props, I'm perfectly happy with how well I've done them, and it certainly is good enough for the fins to go on display again here. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, then make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the bell to be notified each time I upload a new video, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.